Good evening. How's everybody doing? Or good morning, depending on when you watch this. You're probably watching this not live. Um, it's been quite the weekend into week. Um, a lot has happened. Toronto was snowed in for a bit. I didn't even go into the office on Monday. And of course, we had a case of another person being killed in Minnesota by the hands of ICE agents. And so I was supposed to go live a while back, but there was a nagging thing in my spirit that said, I'm not ready yet. I'm waiting. I'm waiting on something. So the first thing I was sure that I was waiting on was for the character assassination to begin on this white male, Alex Pretti, who was unfortunately killed by the ICE agents. I just, for some reason, I felt like there was going to be a shoe that fell. I know on the outset, he seemed like the perfect victim. But I just had a nagging feeling that there was going to be some character assassination. So I was waiting for it. And I was like, if it doesn't happen by Thursday, I'm going to go live and then, figure it out after next episode or whatever. Thursday, it comes out, the character assassination, and I'll play it. But something was still telling me I wasn't ready. I had people messaging me saying, when is your next episode? What are you doing? And I said, I'm waiting. I'm waiting on some things to play out. I'm waiting on some things to play out. Well, lo and behold, I didn't know that my spirit was holding me back for what would happen this morning. Don Lemon was arrested. He wasn't the only person arrested, but he was a big name. And I know the administration thinks it was a big get. There was a lot of dancing, there's a lot of dancing from the current administration in the US. People declaring boldly that they were the ones who ensured that he was arrested. So for context, the arrest of Don Lemon and the three other persons, I'll name them as well, was based on the protests that happened inside the church in Minnesota the same weekend after Renee Good was also killed by ICE agents. So, what had happened leading up to that protest was that a group of activists found out that this particular church had a minister, a pastor, or a leader who was a high level ICE agent. So, he wasn't just a guy on the ground, but he had supervisory capacity. He gave orders, he led teams. And so they decided, the activists, that they would roll up. They're going to roll up at the church and they're going to ask the church how they really feel. Do they know? Do they know that this man is their pastor and also an ICE agent? How do they feel about that? And try to hold, I guess, the church accountable. Now, this is controversial activity. There are people who are conflicted about how bad is it to roll up in a church service and start protesting. Some say is it private space, some say is it public space, and some say it's violation of something. They don't know what it's violation of, but it's violation of something. Don Lemon got a tip from the activists that this was going to go down. So I was watching his show that morning. I was watching his live stream, and he went to an ICE facility. He checked in with some other folks, and then he was told to go to the location where the activists were going to gather for their action. So we saw him interviewing people there. There were even people who were running for office that had come out. And it was kind of like a gathering point, I guess, to see how many people they could assemble before they go to the church. At that point, Don doesn't reveal how much they told him. He just says they're going to do a thing, an operation, a plan, and it's, kind of top secret, and I'll follow. I'll find it. I'll go and I'll cover it for you guys. This is what he says to us, the audience. And so he did. He went and covered it. And he got there after the activists, because the activists actually kind of attended the service before they did any outbursts in the service. So they were already sitting there. And then at some juncture, they got up and said, hey, this guy is your minister, blah, blah, blah. By the time he wrapped up coverage of that, he interviewed church members. He interviewed the pastor that was there that day. The pastor in question was not present. And he interviewed the protesters. At the end of that broadcast, he went off air, and then he came back on air like maybe an hour later, because some pesky right-winger had said online that he was the organizer. Now, anybody with sense, common sense, would know that he, the journalist, would not have been the organizer. It wouldn't make sense to be covering your own event. But for some reason, people took it and ran with it. And they were like, oh, why else would he be in the church if he... Dummies, you don't understand how journalism works. You get a tip, you get a scoop, you get an exclusive, you run, go cover it. Anyway, so he went and covered it. And so he then went live and he said, guys, I don't know where you guys get this idea from. I was there as a journalist. In fact, as he was interviewing people there, even when he was outside interviewing people, when he was inside the church, he's like, I am not with them. I'm not a protester. I'm a journalist. He said it multiple times on camera. So anyway, the administration decides that they're going to go after him. And so they charged him. They wanted to, do charges on him. And I'll talk to you about what they said their charges were. In any case, the charges were dropped by the magistrate judge. The magistrate judge threw it out. There's no evidence here. We're not dealing with this. They immediately appealed it. The appellate court judge also threw it out. There's no evidence here. In fact, the appellate court judge said more than even the magistrate judge. He's like, I don't know why you guys would bring it to me after a magistrate threw it out. But even with you bringing it to me, I can tell you that Don and his crew were not the organizers. He said, I'm paraphrasing. However, Don is now in Los Angeles because it is Grammy weekend, and Don is supposed to be doing the red carpet from the Grammys. He has access to do so, and he's down there doing all kinds of coverage and so on. They went and arrested him. They also went and arrested a well-known, well-renowned, well-respected journalist named Georgia Fort. Georgia, had also done coverage from the church on that fateful day. Jamil Lundy and Tahern Cruz. Now, all of these were arrested in the cities for this protest. Attorney General Pam Bondi, she was the one who says she proudly issued these things. And she says, it was for their anti-ICE demonstration and all kind of stuff. Georgia Fort is a reporter. Jamil Lundy is actually running for office in Minnesota. And Traherne Cruz is a Black Lives Matter activist. Okay, so all kind of acts could be grinding here. So here are some of the things that they wanted to throw at them as accusations. One was, and anybody who knows this administration, you guys know that they like to dig up some acts that you haven't heard of in a long time. So they went and dug up this one, which was actually a slap in the face and a rude approach, but it just shows that for the current administration, everything is theater. It really is. Like, you have to take them seriously, but they do a lot of theater. So here's one of the acts that they threw in there. The Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, officially called the Enforcement Act of 1871. It was a federal law enacted to combat the KKK's terrorism against African Americans, and Republicans made it a federal crime to deprive citizens of their civil rights and allows the president to deploy troops to suspend habeas corpus to do arrests. So this law, they decided that they want to use against activists that are protesting against ICE. Because, in case you didn't know, the whole activity in Minnesota was actually supposed to be against Black folks. They're surprised how many white folks are involved and that they're killing white people, because the aim of this whole activity in Minnesota was to go get, the Somalis, to go, according to the president, to get the fraudsters. Why is ICE being used for this? Anyway, I'm going to show you, a word. I'm going to go over some of this stuff before we even move forward. So, Don Lemon's arrest.
What a day. What a day. Don Lemon is still in federal custody right now. We're going to begin there. Arrested by the FBI late last night in Los Angeles. The news, by the way, did not come from a career prosecutor overseeing the case, which is telling, but instead from a social media post by the Attorney General of the United States, which is also telling.
Make no mistake, under President Trump's leadership and this administration, you have the right to worship freely and safely. And if I haven't been clear already, if you violate that sacred right, we are coming after you.
She is talking about this, a protest inside of a church in St. Paul, Minnesota, a couple of weeks ago, which Don Lemon says he was covering as a journalist.
Oh, what I want to do is just say we love you.
Yeah.
My son and I love you guys.
Yeah.
And that's
I'm journalists. They're activists.
The simplest thing we can say is that we love you guys.
What do you mean, you guys?
Well, whoever's here in this house.
Okay.
We don't distinguish between Christian and non-Christian. We love everyone.
Lemon's attorney, Abby Lowell, says his client was just doing his job, which is protected by the First Amendment. Quote, instead of investigating the federal agents who killed the peaceful Minnesota protesters, the Trump Justice Department is devoting its time, attention, and resources to this arrest. And that is the real indictment of wrongdoing in this case. This unprecedented attack on the First Amendment and transparent attempt to distract attention from the many crises facing this administration will not stand. Don will fight these charges vigorously and thoroughly in court. There were other people arrested today, 3 others, including one independent journalist, Georgia Fort, who released this video of federal agents at her door early this morning. Fort is the vice president of the Minneapolis chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. She also posted this message on Facebook.
You guys, I wanted to alert the public that agents are at my door right now. They're saying that they were able to go before a grand jury sometime, I guess, in the last 24 hours, and that they have a warrant for my arrest. I've talked to my attorney, and I'm being advised to go with them, I guess, down to Whipple.
So none of them resisted arrest. All of them went in, and they're all freed, by the way, and none of them had to pay bail. These instances are very interesting because I don't believe there is an actual case. I believe that it's trumped up charges at the most. And the reporter there just talked about something that is also interesting in this. It's addressing what is the First Amendment. For a lot of people, like the term First Amendment is tossed about a lot, but it is actually a bastion for journalists. And it has very broad reaching protections for journalists to be able to do the work that they need to do. Journalists are on the front lines sometimes of protests. They get tear gas, they get hit, they get shot at because they're trying to bring the news. They're trying to bring the actual event. It is a bizarre time when people can see that happening and have some ought against a journalist covering it. Now, you can dislike what happened in the church. You can dislike the idea that people would protest the church. I personally don't see an issue. I think desperate times call for desperate measures. I think churches are sitting comfortably when people are literally dying in the street. I think a part of your work as church is to have a social gospel and to have your ear and your bodies and your hearts to the ground. And it is not realistic that the same weekend after there was a major shooting and a protester was killed, that you feel it is business as usual at church. So I actually don't have a problem with them shaking up the church. I don't have a problem with it. And I don't have a problem if I was sitting in a church and people came in. I'd be like, okay, let's hear what they got to say. There must be a reason why they're here, because on average, there is no other church that they disturbed that weekend. So there must be something going on in that particular space. So anyway, I want to talk about the First Amendment quickly. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution protects 5 fundamental freedoms: religion, no establishment, free exercise; speech, protects speech; it protects the press; it protects peaceful assembly and the right to petition the government for grievances. This prevents Congress from making laws that infringe upon these rights and applying to state government through the 14th Amendment as part of the Bill of Rights. It safeguards expression from government interference, but doesn't apply to private entities, with its scope continually being interpreted by the Supreme Court. So if you accept that the church is a private entity and not a public space, which is interesting, if you take that stance, then maybe you can be like, oh, they were infringing. But here's the thing. The same amendment that protects the journalist protects religion. So you can't get one without the other. So the journalist has to be able to do their work within your church space that is being protested, in the same way that you feel it is your right to worship. So if your worship was interrupted, you have take out against the people who came into your worship space. But the same First Amendment, which is like the amendment that everybody always pulls on, protects all those elements of freedom. So here's the other act that they came up with to levy at the feet of Don and the other journalists and activists that were arrested. The FACE Act. I'm telling you, they love to dig up an act that has no relevance to the topic, but they use it nonetheless. So the FACE Act is the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. This was established in 1994. United States law that was signed by President Bill Clinton in May of 1994, prohibiting the following 3 things. 1, the use of physical force, threat of physical force, or physical obstruction to intentionally injure, intimidate, interfere with, or attempt to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person who is obtaining an abortion. So this is a specific act to what was happening outside abortion clinics, right? But they want to use this on Don and them. The second thing it protects against, it's the use of physical force, threat of physical force, or physical obstruction to intentionally injure, intimidate, interfere with, or attempt to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person who is exercising or trying to exercise their First Amendment right. Isn't that something? So you're going to use the act that actually protects somebody's First Amendment right. Anyway, the intentional damage is the third thing. The intentional damage or destruction of a reproductive health care facility or place of worship. So when we go by the measure of this act, Don nor the protesters committed any of these things. There was no physical force, there was no threatening, there was no destruction of property, and there was no injury. But beyond that, the act is irrelevant in the instance of a protest that is not at an abortion clinic. But let's say one of their judges that they've purchased decides to go down this path. This is why it keeps getting thrown out by judges, because there is no evidence to bear out any of the acts. You could throw the KKK act, the FACE act, all the acts. None of it bears out. But this is why I've titled tonight's conversation, the whole idea here is that freedom is on thin ice. Because you see, when you have an administration that is willing to go after journalists, this is a clear indicator that we are now in authoritarianism. So when Pam Bondi's like, you have the right to worship it, they were the same people a few months ago who said they will authorize ICE to go into the churches. In fact, they want to remove sanctuary cities. So make it make sense. Make it make sense. So it's okay for ICE to go in and do a raid in a church, but it is not okay for a protest to happen in a church. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. I am blown away by the stupidity that persists in American culture right now. I am blown away by the people who are copying said culture and said thought processes and losing their goddamn mind. How do we get here? How do you get here where people who are non-religious, Trump holds a Bible upside down? Doesn't even know. When you ask him a Bible text, what's your favorite Bible text? 1 Corinthians. If these people go in church for too long, they might burn up. And you let them convince you that they care about religion. You let them convince you that they care about religious rights. You let them get you wound up. So much so that you think it is okay to remove the rights of a journalist. Amazing. Amazing, America. Amazing. So I didn't even intend to cover this Don situation because I didn't know it was going to happen. I knew he had been charged. I knew it had been thrown out. And quite frankly, I thought it would continually be thrown out. Had no idea that these clowns would think that they should go now and arrest him. When you have no basis. They made up a story that a grand jury was convened when? Overnight? When was it convened? Okay, cool. So you convened a grand jury. What did you tell said grand jury to go get them? Because everybody walked out without having to pay bail. Don was released on his own recognizance. Everybody else, I think they signed a piece of paper. Nobody had to pay a fine. Nobody had to do any additional time. They were held for a few hours. Make it make sense. So I had not planned to cover this. I was going to start at the Alex Pretti, murder or killing. And now here's the thing. They are all connected. His death as a protester, as somebody who was exercising his right to assembly and who have aught against the government, and he was protecting someone, all of these things are now connected to the other struggle that journalists are having to protect their First Amendment rights. All connected. So I don't even have to play any lengthy clips here because they're all connected. I don't even have to weave too much of a tale because it is all here for truth. But because I know there are skeptics and because I know that the bots find every topic that has to do with ICE, let me play for you what has been going on in Minnesota. And in particular, let us say, rest in peace to Alex Pretti. So I'm going to show you, I don't think I'm going to show the whole thing because I think by now everybody has seen it. But I'm going to show you the initial pieces of the shooting.
Go. What's up? still. The fuck is wrong with you? Honestly.
Sorry if I'm re-triggering anybody. You know, we have to be so careful when we show these things. That was the footage from the lady in the pink coat who says she wants to be known, and I'll play her shortly. Sometimes we get desensitized. We see a lot of these things, right? And so we have to be very careful. As his family says, Alex was someone with a kind spirit, a kind soul, who cared deeply for the family and friends, and also the American veterans who he cared for as an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. He wanted to make a difference in this world, and unfortunately, he will not be with us to see his impact. Please get the truth out about our son. So, I'm going to show you how they later do the character assassination, but I want to be clear that nothing that happened leading up there deserved death. We cannot have any law enforcement person thinking that they are judge, jury, and executioner. And that is what has been happening in Minneapolis and other places where, you know, there's no due process. There's no gathering of evidence. In fact, after the deaths happen, after the killings happen, they are resisting any form of investigation. They are blocking local authorities whose actual work, the police force, their actual expertise is homicide. ICE cannot investigate a homicide. But they consistently have been blocking local authorities from doing any investigation. It is actually amazing to me how America has been going on. Amazing. So I want to show you the pink coat lady. She had a conversation with Anderson Cooper of CNN.
I want people to know who I am, so I'm not just the pink jacket lady, and that I represent all of us. Alex being shot is the most memorable part of it. The agents are not a part of that, I think, because I watched him die. I mean, I watched him die. I remember him arching his back and his head rolling back, and it was so fast moving, but not for me. Like, when they left, when they fled, which now I see, that after the shooting they decided to just scatter and save themselves. Watching him die.
The federal government says that they are investigating what happened. Have you been contacted by anyone from the federal government? FBI?
No, I have
Border
not.
Patrol, Homeland Security?
I do have a legal team now who are fielding much of that, and I am no longer accessible in those ways.
I talked to your attorney this morning. She said she had not received any outreach from the FBI or anybody from the federal government.
I do not think they have my name yet.
Online, a lot of persons were saying, let's protect this woman at all costs because she had such a vantage point, even though, you know, luckily her video was from a good distance, so we didn't see what she saw, if you know what I mean. Like, she saw intensely him, his life leaving him. So it's interesting that we're here again in Minnesota, and it's interesting that these persons were protesting and they were expressing their ought that they have against the government, and this is the reaction that it is met with at each turn. What is also interesting is that each time it has happened, Kristi Noem, Greg Bovino, whoever is speaking on behalf of the government, does like immediate dismissal that it could be anybody else's fault but the victim, and immediately labels the victim in some way And here's Christy Nome's take.
Individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at the scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
I can't even play the whole thing. It was literally minutes after he was killed. And anybody who watches the video, anybody with sense who watches the video can see that he did not pull his arms. In fact, they didn't know until they started to tussle with him and search him that they found his weapon. So he wasn't brandishing the weapon. He did not approach them with the weapon. In fact, he had a camera in one hand and the other hand was empty because he was recording. That's what his role is as part of all of those persons that are out there, opposing ICE actions. He is an archivist in that instance. A woman was pushed by one of the ICE agents and he tried to protect her. And then they attacked him. At no point did he show, brandish, pull his weapon. But you see the framing that they do? Immediately. So if nobody watched the video and you see her take and you see her as a government official, you will think, oh, bad guy, horrible guy. He came there to, do harm. She said he came with the intent and he approached them with a weapon. Like, really now? Really now? And so we're in a state that is scary to me, where they want us to not believe what our very own eyes have seen. That is a scary place to be. Malcolm X spoke about that. George Orwell spoke about that. Where this deceptive space, where they're also using the media to manipulate people's thoughts. Because again, if you watch that in isolation, you will have a total different perspective than what everybody else saw in the 4 different angles that we saw of the video. Right? Amazing. Again, as I said, these things are connected. What happened with Don in his representation of an event as a journalist, and what happened with this protester, even as he was protecting someone else. Freedom is on thin ice. So before I get to the fallout of all of this, I want to play Don Lemon's take after he was released today. Because I think this is where journalists, independent journalists, people who are well-meaning, people who believe in the truth, you need to get firm at this time.
I want to thank everybody for their support. It truly means the world to me. I had no idea what's going on because obviously I haven't seen anything. I have spent my entire career covering the news. I will not stop now. In fact, there is no more important time than right now, this very moment, for a free and independent media that shines a light on the truth and holds those in power accountable. Again, I will not stop now. I will not stop ever. Last night, the DOJ sent a team of federal agents to arrest me in the middle of the night for something that I've been doing for the last 30 years, and that is covering the news. The First Amendment of the Constitution protects that work for me and for countless of other journalists who do what I do. I stand with all of them, and I will not be silenced. I look forward to my day in court. Thank you all.
I will not be silenced. I personally will not be silenced either. And I think this is a test. This is a moment. This is a turning point for journalists. This is a turning point for people who want to fight for what is all and what is good. in our society, for people in America who want to rescue America that is currently at the brink of authoritarianism, you have to stand up. It is time. It is time. Journalists cannot continue to not only be abused by this kamikaze president. Every time they ask him a question, he calls them names. He does all these uncouth, unprofessional, disgusting things. Journalists need to start walking out, but they're so afraid of losing access to a madhouse because it's not a actual political space at this point. It's a clown show. But they're so afraid, or their entities are so bought and paid for by the right wing that they are afraid to take a stance for good, for truth, for the First Amendment. That is the estate that is supposed to hold the government to account. And a government that does not want to be critiqued, a government that doesn't feel like it should answer questions, is a dangerous government. Very dangerous government. So anyway, all of these things have happened, and there are fallouts. So there's fallout to, the world, Minnesota, searching for the perfect victim, Alex Pretti. Turns out he's not perfect. Now, does not perfect mean you get killed? I don't think so. But hey, the government is clapping and happy to get this footage that I'm going to play for you because I believe in showing full view of everything. So here is the footage. I believe, hope this is the right video. Let's see.
Sources tell CNN that Alex Pretti, the man who was fatally shot in Minneapolis last week, had an encounter with federal agents a week prior. Now, according to sources, they said that that incident, Pretti had stopped his car when he saw ICE agents chasing what he described as a family. They say that he began shouting and blowing his whistle. Now, he also had told these sources that he was tackled to the ground by 5 agents, one of whom leaned on his back, and that encounter left him with a broken rib. One source saying that that day he, quote, thought he was going to die. Now, according to records reviewed by CNN, Pretti was given medication consistent with treating a broken rib. Now, sources also tell CNN that Alex Pretti appeared to be known by federal law enforcement prior to Saturday's incident, though it's unclear whether the officers who tackled him knew who he was. But all of this part of an effort by federal immigration officers to collect personal information on protesters and agitators as the Department of Homeland Security warns of increasing threats to law enforcement conducting operations.
So you heard that. They're collecting a lot of data on those who are protesting. And now we have to wonder if that encounter that happened 11 days before he was killed impacted the incident that had him killed. Did they recognize him? Were they actually following him? Were they tracking him to get to the point where the first incident, he was seen spitting at their vehicle, and he kicked out their taillight. I saw that video. I'm not going to play it for you. You can find it. He did do those things, and his family has confirmed that it was him in that video. So that video, his supposed first encounter with ICE, did not end well for him either. He got injured, but they didn't kill him, and he had his gun on him. If you watch the video closely, he had his gun on him then as well, because he is licensed and he can conceal carry in Minnesota. And yet, that instance where he kicked their vehicle, broke their taillight, spit at their vehicle, argued with them, blew the whistle as all of the activists have been doing. They came out, they beat upon him, and they did not kill him. And then an instance, 11 days later, he's shielding a woman that they had just pushed down, and they grab him, fling him to the ground, tackle him, beat up on him, and then also shoot him after disarming him. How do we get here? Well, I suggest that the 47 days of training is not enough for ICE. I also suggest that they probably should go back to the whole drawing board on ICE, because it is dangerous. It is dangerous when you have underqualified people doing a job that can mean life or death. And this is where we are. So the intimidation tactics, all of those things. And now they're like, hey, because the president heard about this video or saw the video and is like, yes, see, he wasn't a good guy after all. So because he wasn't a good guy, he deserved to die. Is this where our reasoning is now? Is this where we're now devolving? That if the person did something bad before, they now deserve to die. So here's the funny thing, and this is why I was waiting on the character assassination to come, because this is what Black bodies have experienced forever. Whenever we have had a bad encounter with law enforcement, immediate character assassination begins. So white victims are just experiencing what has been felt by Black bodies for years in Americas. Actually in the West. Actually in the West. I'm talking everywhere in the West. When you are encountering police, when you're encountering law enforcement in Black bodies, the danger is if they so happen to kill you. I've seen them character assassinate people they shot in the back. We can go down the list. One of the deaths that still impacts me greatly, Sandra Bland. She was pulled over. It was a traffic stop and yet ended up dead at the end of the night. And when they were done with her reputation, Breonna Taylor sleeping in her bed, a no-knock warrant, and they went in and took her out, and they had all kind of things. The boyfriend was this, she was that. Mike Brown, oh, he wasn't upstanding. Trayvon Martin, oh, why is he walking in that neighborhood? He lives nearby. And so many of them. Even George Floyd, that got everybody to stop in their tracks for a second. They also were trying to justify his death by saying he was passing off a fake counterfeit $50. This consistently happens to Black bodies. So now for the first time, when we thought this might be your perfect victim, this might be your turning point victim, white male, VA, ICU nurse, helping people, gun holder, license carrier, can conceal carry. Here's what you think would be the one. Turns out it wasn't. Because here's what the president says, and I want you right-wingers to listen to your president. Because you guys hang on to the Second Amendment. You guys want the right to bear arms. And yet, when a left-wing person has a gun on his possession, all of a sudden you forget that right. And so did your president.
The entire country is talking about what happened this past weekend in Minnesota. You've already spoken about it. Everyone watching has seen the video. Everyone has an opinion. I'm curious what you thought when you first saw that video.
Well, I think the whole thing is terrible. I don't like the fact that he was carrying a gun that was fully loaded and he had 2 magazines with him, and it's pretty unusual. But nobody knows when they saw the gun, how they saw the gun, everything.
Clown in Chief says it's pretty unusual to have a loaded gun and to have magazines. Idiot. Anyway, so this is his position. You guys who voted for him on the basis that you will continue to keep your arms. He so quickly is willing to dismiss that gentleman's right to bear arms. We're in upside down world, you know. Another bit of the fallout that I actually like, I actually was happy to hear about, was our friend Gregory Bovino. Gregory Bovino, you may know, is the one who thought that he could cosplay as an SS Army man and walk through the streets of Minnesota to intimidate people and yell commands and walk in his trench coat with very, very distinct look, like an SS Army man. He was taken down because he, like Noam, were saying things that were not true about the incident. And his approach seems to be an escalating force. It seems to be a negative force as it relates to the work that ICE does. So this chief of ICE has been removed and sent back to California. He was also shipped out with a bunch of other ICE agents. We believe some of them were the shooters in the case with Pretti. So let me remind you about the bluster of Bovino when he enters a space and the commands he gives to his people.
Arrest as many people that touch you as you want to. Those are the general orders all the way to the top. Everybody fucking gets it if they touch you. You hear what I'm saying? Less legals? We're going to look at shipping tractor trailer loads of that shit in here. So you catch what it's all about us now. It ain't about them. Professional, legal, ethical, moral. You know what we're talking about. Legal, ethical, moral. You're on camera. But other than that, it's what we do. What city is it, Team? It's fucking ours. This is our fucking city.
Real bad man, eh? Bad man. It's our city. Yes, that's the energy he brings. And that's the kind of encouragement that he has been giving ICE agents. So when they go out, anybody who touches you, arrest. Anybody who touches you, take them down. Right? So makes sense if you only have 47 days of training that when you're faced with a certain situation, you will either underreact or overreact. Right? And that's what has been happening. Well, they took him out. And I'm very grateful they take him out. They need to take out a whole bunch of them. So here is the fallout. One of the fallouts.
Tonight, the White House is facing mounting pressure over the deadly shooting in Minneapolis. Not only are Democrats threatening to block DHS funding, which could lead to a partial government shutdown on Friday, a growing number of Republicans are questioning the federal surge in Minnesota. Some in the GOP are now calling for a full investigation and congressional hearings. Others urging the White House to come up with a new game plan.
They, being the White House, need to recalibrate on what needs to be done to make sure that that respect is going to be reinstilled.
In Minnesota today, a Republican gubernatorial candidate even dropped out of the race.
I cannot support the National Republican's stated retribution on the citizens of our state.
Now, with Border Czar Tom Homan heading to Minnesota and Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino heading out, according to two administration officials, the White House is downplaying any friction among top officials, including Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem.
Should the deployment of Mr. Homan to Minneapolis be seen as a sign that the president is dissatisfied with how the officials on the ground had handled the incident?
No, Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States.
Whatever. Take her down too. In Jamaica, we say, come down. She said, come down. Take down Noem, take down all of them. Sending the border czar doesn't mean there's change. And I hope that those who are protesting in Minnesota don't get excited that Bovino is out, because they are sending in the border czar. And the border czar is coming in kind of talking like he's going to bring difference. He says they're going to do targeted and strategic enforcements, focusing on authorized residents, on unauthorized residents with a criminal history. Because remember, that was what they said they were going for, criminals. But they've been grabbing everybody. They've grabbed kids, they've grabbed babies, they've grabbed moms, they've grabbed people who are citizens. They've been grabbing everybody. So now he's saying we're going to go back to that. He's also hinting that there will be a drawdown of the number of people here, but no specifics. In case you don't know, there's 3,000 ICE agents that were placed in Minnesota. All out battlefield. So we'll see what Homan does if he can temper down the temperature in Minnesota. But know that it's not just Minnesota. These actions are happening all over. It's just that right now the attention is on Minnesota. But don't you get excited. It is all over. So what has been happening in the interim is everybody is planning their defense. Because this thing has a fallout, Even the Don Lemon arrest will have a fallout. Because you're either going to ignite everybody who is for the First Amendment around Don. Don for sure is going to have growth in his numbers. You've just made him famous. You've just made him more famous than he was before. But there's also going to be fallout because a number of these people, if they are not fired now, they're going to be fired later. or when they're out of office, they will be impeached. And they know it. They know it because a certain person, I'll show you her, she already has started to plan her defense. And some are saying she's using the Nuremberg defense, and I must agree. So I'm going to show you what she said. Everything I've done at the direction of the president and Stephen. Stephen here being Stephen Miller. Yes, ma'am. She's planning her defense. So for those who don't know, the SS or the Nuremberg defense is one where they, they go through the process of saying it wasn't me. And of course, as you know, Nuremberg defense or superior orders is a legal plea in which a person accused of war crimes or atrocities argues they were merely following orders of a superior officer and thus should not be held responsible. This was established, of course, during the Nuremberg trials in the 1945 to 46 period. And it was largely rejected defense, by the way, setting the precedent that following orders is not a valid defense. But somehow Christy gets it in her head that she can try the Nuremberg defense. So she's positioning herself now because she knows she's under the microscope. She knows that at some point, if another shoe falls as it relates to this ICE stuff, she will be next on the chopping block. So she's already positioning herself for when the impeachment comes, whenever we are rid of this current administration and another entity is in place. She is preparing her defense, I was told. So she says it very clear here. Everything I've done at the direction of the president and Stephen Miller. I tell you, these people are funny. There's another curious thing that I want to address before I move on. It's the last thing as it relates to the end of freedoms being on thin ice. Nicki Minaj. What is up with Nicki Minaj? I mentioned her on the last show, and I feel like she is insisting on being in everybody's timeline. And she is so far up the arse of the current president of the US that it is scary. Now, there are some arguments as to why she would have been cozying up. One is that she has a launch coming in March for an album. Two is that she has a brother who was sentenced to 25 years for child rape. Three, her husband, Kenneth Petty, had sexual assault charges on him, even though he was only serving house arrest. 3 or 4, I lost count, she was also in danger of losing her home because she was in a battle with, neighbors. And there's also the curious case of her pretending to care about religion. Remember, she was the one who went and presented that they should, go in and help the Nigerian Christians. Anybody find it curious that they haven't gone back? So they launched missiles into villages. Some of them have no clue why they were attacked. There was no ISIL presence there. But she went and told everybody how, the administration is helping to fight for Christians. So you're telling me that the fight for Christians has ended? Only one attack was needed? My, how things move so quickly. How it is so resolved. I guess the Christians are okay in Nigeria now. I guess they're okay. I guess there's no ISIL presence anymore. Can you imagine? The way they have fooled people is beyond me. The other thing is that people are saying, remember in 2018, she told us that she came to America illegally. I believe at the age of 5. So people have been thinking that she wants to get her status sorted out as a citizen. And you know what? Based on recent posts, based on recent activity, it must be so. Look at this. This was actually at the launch of what the president is calling the Trump accounts. God help us. He's trying to get people to send them money to save for their kids. Like, you don't know where a bank is located. Anyway.
Hello. Well, I don't know what to say, but I will say that I am probably the president's #1 fan. And that's not going to change. And the hate or what people have to say, it does not affect me at all. It actually motivates me to support him more. And it's going to motivate all of us to support him more. We're not going to let them get away with bullying him and, you know, the smear campaigns. It's not going to work, okay? He has a lot of force behind him, and God is protecting him. Amen.
Why some of these people must be grateful that there's the God of the Old Testament isn't active, striking them with lightning. I could just vomit in my mouth. I could just upchuck at the rubbish that she just said. She didn't even know why she was up there, because she wasn't supposed to speak. He brought her up because this is all a part of the clown show, all a part of the performance arts that they are doing. And so now she considers herself to be an influencer, especially in his realm. And subsequent to that appearance, she posted online that she got her her citizenship card, and she posted the Trump card. You know, the card that he was selling for millions of dollars. If you want to become a citizen, all you've got to have is $5 million and you get this card. Now the White House is saying that the card that she posted was just a memento. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't what you think it is, blah, blah, blah. Anyway. The other thing now we have to wonder about is, since she is appearing to have influence and since she is a bad-minded person, maybe her feud with Don Lemon propelled this. Because if you recall, a few weeks ago, after the church incident, after the coverage that he did, she went online and she said, Don, you see sucking lemon is disgusting. How dare you? I want that thug in jail. Thug Nicki. I want that thug in jail. He would never do that to any other religion. Lock him up. That's what she tweeted out. And Dawn kind of, you know, addressed it and told her, you know, she really needs to go take care of her own business. Her house is, you know, spoiling. But could this be a part of it? I'm not sure it is, but she definitely is trouncing around like she has all kinds of influence. And she definitely is spewing enough hate online that makes one wonder if there's a there. Again, freedom on thin ice, because now people are trying to infringe on others' rights, infringe on his rights as a journalist by putting this out into the ether. Very interesting times. Actually scary times. And I'm you know, wondering, how long will we have to endure watching you do this, America? How long will we have to endure you allowing for these persons that are, you know, wholly unqualified for the roles that they have taken up? And watch you allow for your freedoms to be consistently eroded. And impacting us, because your bluster president is putting tariffs on everything and everyone. He doesn't even have a policy. Doesn't have a plan. He just does it willy-nilly. Wiling out. Somebody told him about tariffs and he can't let it go. And he doesn't even know how it works. Can't let it go. He thinks it's a solution, thinks it's an economic solution. He's destroying your country bit by bit. Bit by bit. Ask the farmers. I'm going to do a whole thing on the farmers. I'm going to do a whole thing on your farmers. Because you guys don't understand the damage that is being done. It's all well and good for us to address these things which are critical. First Amendment rights, whether or not people have rights to bear arms, all of these rights and freedoms. The other thing that we have not really fully addressed is economics. We have not fully addressed how all of this is a part of a distraction pool, right? Because guess what happened today? They released millions of files from the Epstein files and then deleted the link. Some people grabbed some of the files quickly, and oh my goodness, that's a whole other show. Because we've been so caught up in the loss of freedom that we cannot even discuss the real thing that they've been trying to distract from, which is the significant mess that is in the Epstein files. I'm telling you, the stuff that is out there right now, it is more sickening than you have seen so far from the Epstein files. Sickening. If those things are true, America, you got to do something. You got to impeach. You got to do something. You cannot. If those things are true, it is an indictment on Americans who voted in the last election or who stayed home and allowed for this cretin to be in office. Indictment, I tell you. So as we consider how all these things come together in one space now, we are in a space where we're watching you guys walk closer and closer to the edge of losing your rights and freedoms. And it is scary to me how many people are okay with dictatorship. It's usually people who have never lived in a dictatorship that are thinking it's okay. You should speak to people who come from countries that fled dictatorship and ask them, what are some of the signs? One of them is when you start locking up your journalists. One of them is when you take over control of the media. Right now, I don't think there's any entity on the mainstream side that is not wholly owned by friends of Trump. One of the other things is when you start to attack your own citizens on the streets, when you start to suppress their freedom to protest. All of these things, if you look at all the countries that America used to act like they're better than, all the countries that America used to act like you have some moral high standing over, you are literally experiencing and doing the same things you were critiquing. Scary time. I feel like a voice crying in some kind of forest that has many, many, many trees. I am not being heard. And I know a lot of people feel the same way. And that is why we continually do this in hopes that some way, somehow, it gets through. It gets through the echo chambers. It breaks through. Sense breaks through. You cannot be a proud proponent of the Second Amendment and then not think it is okay for somebody who is protesting the government to have their arms as well. It can't be okay for me and not for thee. That cannot be how your laws work. That cannot be how your constitution is applied. It cannot be. And if that is what you want, then let us know, because you're basically saying you don't like freedom. Because what happens if the tide were to turn? You know, nobody's considering that. You guys in the comment section, you go off and you're pro your president. And none of you stop to think, what happens when he is no longer in office? Whether or not you guys are silly enough to allow for him to breach your constitution and get a third term, or whether or not he, just leaves office because his time is up. You're not thinking about what happens when the other party comes in. When you have eroded all the boundaries around freedom, when you have eroded all the laws, when you allow for everything to be led by executive order, when you allow for Congress to sit on its hands, when you allow for there to be no other level of accountability because the Supreme Court says he has immunity. When you allow that, is that okay when the next guy comes in? Are you going to be okay with that? You got to think about that. It's cute now. It's cute now when you think you have power. It's cute now when you're ignoring that your pocketbook is empty. It's cute now. But what happens if you were to receive the same treatment flipped on you? It's okay again? Still okay? Interesting. So as we move through the coming days and weeks, I anticipate that the things that are happening in Minnesota, they might tamper down a bit. I hope that the protests do not stop. Today was actually supposed to be a strike day in America, and I don't think it took because there was so much distraction. And that's what they're doing. They inundate you with distraction. His style is chaos. His leadership style is chaos. Throw as much spaghetti on the wall. Distract, distract, distract. We're going to do millions of files dumped from the Epstein files. But let's over here, we're going to arrest Don. We're going to arrest Miss Georgia Ford. We're going to arrest the other three. Oh, what the heck? Media is now distracted. So people didn't even get to pull down the content before the link was killed. Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. And there's so much other things that happened today that I haven't even shown you. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to belabor the point. And obviously we will discuss this continually because of the president you have. And because of the impact he's trying to have on the globe and the maddening effect he's having on me in particular. Anyway, that's that for now. I'm going to move on to the other segment of the show. This is our arts segment. I wanted to highlight a few things. One, we had some critical persons pass away. Critical to me, important to me, maybe not to you, but very important to me in terms of the arts. In particular, I speak of Catherine O'Hara. I speak of Sly Dunbar. And I speak of Miss Shirley from Beauty to the Streets. So I just want to highlight them quickly because I feel like in the midst of everything that has happened, losing these persons who stand in interesting spaces, who had standards in interesting spaces, is worthy of discussing at this time. So I'm gonna highlight them a little bit. So Catherine O'Hara, Schitt's Creek's star and comedy legend, she dies at the age of 71. You may know her from Home Alone. In the 1990s, she got that show. She's also an Emmy-winning actress. And she was, of course, as you see there, she was in Schitt's Creek. She was in some other movies as well. She had a very illustrious career and very distinct acting style. She was definitely not a copy of anyone. And I really, really appreciated that. And so I will always have a little smile when I see her work. Have a little smile when I remember the impact she's had in the creative arts, in particular as an actress. And she's done everything from Second City to, the big screen to, comedies and so on. Rest in peace goes to Catherine O'Hara, and we send greetings and love to those who were not just her fans, but her family and her friends. This one definitely, hits every Christmas now when we watch Home Alone, because we watch Home Alone every Christmas. We're going to have a little bit of a emotional moment. Catherine O'Hara. The other one that is near and dear, this person actually is Jamaican reggae icon, and he passed away as well on the weekend. And I don't know, we lost like two icons back to back. We lost Stephen Cat Core from Third World fame, and now we've lost this gentleman here. His credits in the music industry are long and illustrious. Sly Dunbar's first recording and appearance was on the Dave and Ansel Collins album Double Barrel, and he began playing drums at the age of 15 with Yard Brooms. He later joined the Ansel Collins-led band Skin, Flesh, and Bones. He also was a part of Junior Murvin's Police and Thieves, Bob Marley and the Wailers' Punky Reggae Party, the 12-inch, and Bob Dylan's albums Infidels and Empire Burlesque. Sly played it all and did it well. Other notable sessions include Sly and Robbie's contribution to 3 Grace Jones albums, as well as their work with Herbie Hancock, Joe Cocker, Serge Gainsbourg, and the Rolling Stones. He collected numerous honors throughout the years, and he was recognized by the Jamaica government with the Order of Distinction, awarded the Musgrave Gold Medal by the Institute of Jamaica, and received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the University of Minnesota in May of 2025. I will always love and remember the Mission Impossible Taxi Gang version that was on Reggae Gold 1997. I can't play music for you here, so that's why I'm telling you what to search for in YouTube. Go and search Mission Impossible Taxi Gang, Reggae Gold 1997, and listen to the work that they did there. Illustrious producer, brilliant drummer, probably one of the best to come out of Jamaica. Humble guy, nice guy, and he's no longer with us. And I say rest in peace to him as well, because Mr. Lowell Fillmore, Sly Dunbar, you did well. And lastly, I want to say rest in peace to this woman who, I mean, we've been following her for years. And, you know, there's some people who do small deeds, but they're great. And she is one of them. Her small deeds actually became lots of deeds. And she, you know, has made an impact in areas that a lot of people wouldn't dare venture. That's Miss Shirley. Her name is Shirley Rains, Miss Shirley. And she passed away just this week. She is known for Beauty to the Streets. She's the founder, and she's cared for Skid Row's homeless. She was 58 years old. For years, the Long Beach resident offered beauty services, food, showers, and more to the homeless people in Skid Row through her nonprofit. When I tell you this one has really hit me, I think it's because I know the sacrifice that it took to commit her life in the last, you know, few years to those who are unhoused in Skid Row and in other places. Like I've seen her go to Vegas and other places. It's heavy work. And if you followed her, I followed her online, she would go live sometimes and she would talk about the heaviness of the work. She would talk about her struggles, emotional challenges, and so on. She would also be fun and chatty. She would have us online when she's, you know, preparing meals for the homeless. She talked about how, you know, how much care she takes to not, you know, bring any kind of food to them and, you know, follow protocol and so on. Sometimes she'd be up and she felt like baking something for them. And she's like, you guys, are you up? Let's, you know, bake together. Such a spirit. She had experienced loss in her life. She lost one of her children, her son. And that kind of shifted her emotionally. And she ended up pouring her energy and herself into this work called Beauty to the Streets. Actually, the first time I saw her was when she was doing some homeless women's hair and dyeing it. And I was like, how did this get in my timeline? Very interesting. I've also done work with, you know, delivering help to those who are unhoused in Toronto. So I know what it means to get up early morning to ensure that you get to them, to get them maybe breakfast and to get them going on their way. I know what it means to stand up in the cold and to, you know, ensure that they have socks and something warm and so on. And so understand what her singular effort was, and I understand how much work it took to get others to support. She had a GoFundMe to continue to support it so that she could do it weekly. She got, from time to time, sponsors would come in and join in with her so she could do it on a larger scale, but she was always committed. And then there were people who were within her purview that we began to love, like Mercedes. Anybody who follows Miss Shirley knows about Mercedes. Mercedes, had challenges, was unhoused, has mental health concerns, and Miss Shirley seemed to be the only person who can get through to her. And their exchanges were fun. Their exchanges were real. She had no airs about her. And I'm extremely happy that the NAACP Image Awards gave her an award last year. Gave her an award, I believe 2024. I am so happy that she was able to at least get that accolade because of the work that she has been doing. Was tireless work, was mostly thankless work. May she rest in peace. That one, I'm telling you, it really, really, really hurt me. So I don't want to end there. I want to end on a brighter note. And so I want to give some props. We have some interesting things happening in the city of Toronto. Some icons are being recognized in Canada, and I want to let you know about them. So we're going to get started here. Canada Post does this thing. Canada Post, for those who can't figure it out, it's our postal service here in Canada. They do this thing for Black History Month where they honor, icons and so on with their with a stamp. And so here's one of them. This year, one of the icons being acknowledged is Maestro Fresh Wes. For those who know their hip-hop, let your backbone slide. He was, of course, one of the pioneers of hip-hop in Canada, and it is very much due this kind of respect. He became the first Canadian MC to break into the mainstream with his monster hit Let Your Backbone Slide in 1989. And we say congratulations to Maestro Fresh Wes. I have already ordered mine, and I suggest you do the same. The other person that is there is somebody who was actually born in Jamaica and had also made her mark in the music scene. And I tell you, I am personally extremely proud of her and proud to see that she is getting this honor. Michie Mee. Michie Mee exploded onto the scene in the late 1980s and was among the first to bring Jamaican patois into her rhymes. And when I tell you, she made her impact and continues to make an impact. All of them actually are still making an impact. Kudos to Michie Mee, yard girl, representing in the hip-hop scene. And I'm very happy that I was able to order mine. I'm looking forward to having this memento, for myself. And the other group that was being acknowledged, because they're acknowledging 3 entities this year for Black History Month. So we had Maestro Fresh Wes, we had Michie Mee, and then we have this group. Montreal-based Muzion or Muzion. I don't know, I'm not a French speaker. They were formed in 1996. They brought a distinct sound to the world of hip-hop, layering French, English, and Haitian Creole into their music. Kudos to Muzion. They are also honorees from Canada Post for Black History Month, and I've also ordered this one. So you can go on Canada Post website right now and get your own keepsake of these stamps. They're once in a lifetime, only for Black History Month. So make sure you get yours. Very proud of them. Very happy to see that they were honored. I think it's actually really monumental because it's the first time that Canada Post is acknowledging hip hop stars. So that is great stuff. Lastly, I want to send out congratulations and kudos to all the Juno Award nominees. And in particular, the genre that I care about a lot. I care about quite a few genres. I care about R&B, soul, hip hop, and of course, I care about reggae. So these are the nominees this year for the Reggae Recording of the Year. First up is Ready For You, Exco Levi and Keelstone. Then we have a whole group that did the Dagger Rhythm Cypher. Jojo, you made that. Young Enough, Erin B, Topman Miko, One Don, and Enzo. And this was an independent production. We also have Kirk Diamond with Dea. And that was also an independent production. Then we have Naomi Cowan, Jamaican Canadian Naomi Cowan. She did Welcome to Paradise, and she's submitting the album for consideration. And then one of my favorite people, Amoy, alongside Samora, with a song called More Reggae, Funk It Up. Congratulations to these nominees. Wishing you guys all the best as the Junos comes up in March. And of course, this weekend is the Grammys. And so we're going to be looking out to see who will win. You know, Jesse Royale, Mortimer, Keznamdi, Lila Ike, Vibes Cartel are up for the Reggae Grammys. And we look forward to seeing who walks away with the prize. Anyway, guys, this is it for another Talk the Tings. You know, you'll see me again soon. I want to let you know that I have something in the works that I will do a little bit of promo about. We're going to be doing a series with one of a friend of mine who's a psychotherapist who will be helping me to navigate some topics that I think are of importance. We're going to start out with a series on grief. And so look out for that maybe as soon as next weekend. So I'll keep you posted on that. Look out for that. Also, in case you are in Canada and you are Jamaican, you can participate in the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council votes. Election is underway and votes are underway. If you have not registered, you can't vote now. But just for your awareness, you can visit connectmeja.com. Connectmeja.com for your own awareness. But those of you who've registered, reminder, voting started already, and I'm looking forward to your support. I'm one of the candidates vying for a seat on the council to represent the Jamaican diaspora from Canada to Jamaica. So look out for that as well. And again, you know how we do on Talk the Tings. We keep it real. We give you facts. And we are not afraid. I'm telling you, this is the time to not be afraid. Take care, everyone, and have a good one. See you soon.